Hi guys, it's Katie with String Expert. Today we're going to work on part 2 of Gavotte. So let me play for you part 1, which we already learned, and then I'm going to add on part 2 and then we're going to work on learning it. So here it goes. And then moving on to part 2. Now, as you can hear, a lot of part 2 is the main melody from part 1. So really spend the time and make sure that you understand the main melody. We'll go through part 1 of the video so you understand the notes really well and the key signature really well. So that way when you get to this section, you'll be all ready to go. Okay, so starting on part 2, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the notes slowly. And this is a really basic standard section in the piece. So it's not so much a lot about the notes as being too difficult or too challenging. It's more about just adding expression. So let's go through and let's play this. And remember, we're in the key of G minor. So we're going to have a low first finger on all 3 strings, high first finger on the G string. Then our second finger is in its normal spot, and our third finger is in its normal spot. And then on the E and the A string, we're going to have a low 4th finger, and on the D and the G string, we're going to have a regular 4th finger. Okay, let's start from the beginning of part 2. Here we go. So that is essentially the entire section that we need to learn. Anything after that is the main melody that we should have already learned in part 1. So as you can hear, if we just play it really simply and slowly, it's so boring. So a lot of this has to do with bowing. So we want to be very expressive with each individual bow to make sure that it's smooth. And even though we don't slur any of the notes in this version of the Gavotte, I have seen others that you do, we want to make sure that each note sounds smooth and connected. So let's try that. Now, it says mezzo forte, which means medium loud. So we start out the piece in part 1 playing everything in piano. Then part 2, we're going to start out in mezzo forte, so we're going to be a little bit louder. But as I mentioned in part 1, we can do a lot in terms of dynamics, so a lot isn't written in the piece, but you can add a lot of expressions. Like, for example, if we're following this line. If I play it like that, it sounds boring. Oh my gosh, like nobody would want to listen to you. So if we add some dynamics, we're still within the mezzo forte range, which is a range. What we're going to do is sort of get a little bit louder as we go up and get a little bit more quieter as we go down. So let's try that. Now here you can do a lot of different things, but whatever you do, don't make your quarter notes boring. So what I do is I accent some of the notes, I vibrate on some of the notes, and I think of it as sort of like a rolling wave where you sort of go up a little bit and down and then up and down a little bit more. So let's start at those quarter notes. Now I take a little bit of a pause and then play the last note. You hear it? It's just minute. You don't want to have an actual pause because it's not written in, but it's that and then play the next note. Okay, so then the next section is essentially the same section in piano, except we have a little bit more bowing. So we want to have these sound similar, but they don't want to be exactly the same. So we're going to be much quieter. We're going to have a bunch of expression, but my goal is to not have it sound exactly the same because then it's just boring. Okay, so let's go on. So I do that same, breathe, and then play the next note. So you have a little bit more of an expression and a draw as you go down. Okay, then moving on, we just play the main melody once again. So let me play the whole part 2 so you can hear what it's supposed to sound like. So stay tuned for part 3, where we'll learn the final part of Gavotte.